I refused to be a father figure to my ex's son after she cheated. Then her new BF showed up at my door with a shocking truth about her pregnancy, and things got messy. I, M34, recently ended my relationship with my girlfriend Sheila, F29, after 5 years together. We had been living together for the past 3 years, and during that time, I had grown close to her son, Jake, 7, from a previous relationship. Jake's biological father has never been in the picture, which added an extra layer of complexity to our situation. Sheila and I met through mutual friends at a local pub. It was a typical Friday night, and I remember being struck by her infectious laugh and vibrant personality. We hit it off immediately, talking for hours about everything from our favorite books to our dreams for the future. We started dating soon after, and I felt like I had finally found someone special. At first, I was hesitant about getting involved with someone who had a child. I had always imagined starting a family from scratch with my future partner. But Sheila was upfront about Jake from the beginning. She assured me that she wasn't looking for a father figure for him, just someone who could accept them both. I appreciated her honesty and decided to give the relationship a chance. As time went on, I grew fond of Jake. He was a bright, curious kid with a mischievous streak that reminded me of myself at his age. We would spend weekends playing video games, building elaborate Lego structures, or exploring the local parks. I taught him how to ride a bike and helped him with his homework. I never tried to replace his father, but I did my best to be a positive male role model in his life. Our life together wasn't always easy. Sheila worked long hours as a nurse, often pulling night shifts. I worked as a software developer, which allowed me more flexibility to help with Jake. We made it work, though, and for a while, it felt like we were building a real family. About 6 months ago, I started noticing changes in Sheila's behavior. She became distant and was constantly on her phone, even during our date nights. When I asked her about it, she brushed it off, saying it was work-related stress. I wanted to believe her, but something felt off. Last month, I found out the real reason behind her changed behavior. Sheila had reconnected with her high school sweetheart, David, M30, through Facebook. They had been talking for months, and she admitted to developing feelings for him again. I was devastated. The night she told me, we were supposed to be celebrating my promotion at work. I had made reservations at our favorite Italian restaurant, the place where we had our first official date. Instead of toasting to our future, I found myself listening to Sheila talk about her past with David and how she felt they had unfinished business. I confronted Sheila about her emotional affair, and she broke down, confessing that she wanted to give things another try with David. She said she felt like they had a connection that she and I never quite achieved. She talked about how David understood her in a way that I never could, having known her since they were teenagers. I was hurt and angry. I felt like the last 5 years of my life had been a lie. We had talked about marriage, about having more children together. Now, it felt like those dreams were crumbling around me. We agreed to break up, and I moved out of our shared apartment within a week. It was a whirlwind of packing boxes and making arrangements. The hardest part was saying goodbye to Jake. He didn't fully understand what was happening, and it broke my heart to see him confused and upset. I tried to explain that sometimes adults need to live apart, but that I still cared about him. The look on his face when I drove away with my car packed full of belongings is something I'll never forget. I moved into a small studio apartment across town. It was a far cry from the comfortable home I had shared with Sheila and Jake, but it was all I could manage on short notice. The first few nights were the hardest. The silence was deafening, and I found myself missing the sound of Jake's laughter and the comfortable routine we had established as a family. A few days after I moved out, Sheila called me. She said Jake was having a hard time adjusting to the breakup and asked if I could still spend time with him regularly. She suggested that I could pick him up from school once a week and maybe have him stay over at my new place on weekends. I was torn. On one hand, I cared deeply for Jake and didn't want to abandon him. We had built a strong bond over the years, and the thought of not being part of his life anymore was painful. I remembered all the promises I had made to always be there for him, to attend his school plays and soccer games, to teach him how to shave when the time came. On the other hand, I felt like it wasn't my responsibility anymore, especially since Sheila had chosen to end our relationship for another man. The idea of seeing Jake regularly, of maintaining a semblance of our old life, felt like it would only prolong my pain and make it harder to move on. And what about when David inevitably moved in with Sheila? Where would I fit in then? I told Sheila I needed time to think about it. The next few days were a blur of conflicting emotions. I talked to my best friend Mike about the situation. He reminded me of how much I had struggled when my own parents divorced, and how confusing it had been when my mom's new boyfriends would come and go from my life. His words stuck with me as I weighed my decision. After careful consideration, I decided it would be best for everyone if I distanced myself from Jake. It wasn't an easy choice, but I felt it was the right one. I called Sheila and explained my decision. I told her that while I cared for Jake, continuing to be in his life would make it difficult for me to move on and could potentially confuse him as well. I suggested that it would be better for Jake to adjust to the new family dynamic with David rather than having me involved part-time. Sheila didn't take my decision well. She accused me of being selfish and said I was punishing Jake for her mistakes. She reminded me of all the times I had told Jake I loved him and said I was breaking my promises to him. Her words cut deep, and I found myself questioning my decision. But I stood my ground. I told Sheila that it was unfair of her to expect me to continue being a father figure to Jake when she had chosen to end our relationship. I said that Jake deserved stability, and it would be better for him to adjust to the new family dynamic with David rather than having me involve it part-time. I reminded her that she had been the one to assure me at the beginning of our relationship that she wasn't looking for a father figure for Jake. The conversation ended badly, with Sheila hanging up on me in anger. Since then, she's been telling our mutual friends that I'm an asshole for abandoning Jake. Some of our friends think I'm doing the right thing by setting boundaries, while others believe I should still be there for Jake regardless of my relationship status with Sheila. I'm starting to doubt my decision. I miss Jake and worry about how he's coping with all these changes, but I also feel like it's not my place anymore to be involved in his life, especially with David now in the picture. I keep thinking about what's best for Jake in the long run, not just what feels good in the moment. Am I the asshole for refusing to be a father figure to my ex-girlfriend's son after our breakup? Update 1. It's been about a month since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their advice and support. It really helped me gain perspective on the situation. After much deliberation, I decided to reach out to Sheila to discuss the situation with Jake. I figured we could have a mature conversation about what would be best for him. I spent days rehearsing what I would say, trying to find the right words to express my concerns without coming across as bitter or resentful. However, things didn't go as planned. When I called Sheila, David answered her phone. He was polite but clearly uncomfortable. I could hear Sheila in the background asking who it was. When David told her, there was a moment of tense silence before he passed the phone to Sheila. Sheila immediately started berating me for suddenly caring about Jake. Her voice was sharp with anger and hurt. I tried to explain that I had always cared, but needed time to process everything. She wasn't having it. She accused me of being selfish, of only thinking about my own feelings and not considering Jake's. During our heated conversation, Sheila dropped a bombshell on me. She revealed that she was pregnant with David's child. Apparently, they had been seeing each other in person for longer than she had initially admitted. The timeline suggested that their physical affair had started before our breakup. I was stunned. The revelation brought back all the hurt and anger I had been trying to work through. I felt like I had been punched in the gut. All the progress I thought I had made in moving on suddenly felt meaningless. I ended the call abruptly, needing time to process this new information. For the next few days, I was a mess. I couldn't focus at work, and I found myself reliving every moment of my relationship with Sheila, wondering how I could have been so blind. I started questioning everything, wondering if there had been signs I had missed, clues that should have tipped me off to her infidelity. A few days later, I received a series of text messages from Sheila. She apologized for her outburst and explained that her pregnancy hormones were making her emotional. She then proceeded to ask if I would consider being a godfather to her unborn child, saying it would mean a lot to Jake to have me involved in his sibling's life. I was floored by her request. It felt like she was trying to manipulate me into staying in their lives. Did she really think I would be okay with being a godfather to the child she had conceived while cheating on me? It felt like a slap in the face, a complete disregard for my feelings. I took a day to calm down before responding. I politely declined, reiterating that I needed to distance myself for my own well-being. I explained that while I cared for Jake, being involved in their lives in any capacity would be too painful for me. This led to another barrage of messages from Sheila, alternating between guilt-tripping me and making promises about how things would be different this time. She even suggested that David was okay with me being involved in their lives, which I found hard to believe. The messages came at all hours of the day and night, making it clear that Sheila was struggling with the situation as much as I was. I decided to take action to protect myself. I blocked Sheila's number and social media accounts. It was a difficult decision, but I felt it was necessary for my mental health. I needed to create space to heal and move on, and I couldn't do that with Sheila constantly reaching out. A week later, I ran into Jake and David at the local supermarket. I was in the produce section trying to decide between two nearly identical bunches of bananas when I heard a familiar voice shouting my name. Jake saw me first and ran up to me, giving me a big hug. It was clear he had missed me, and I'd be lying if I said I hadn't missed him too. Seeing Jake brought back a flood of emotions. He looked taller than I remembered, and I noticed he had lost one of his front teeth since I'd last seen him. It hit me how much I was missing out on, how quickly he was growing up without me there to see it. David approached us, looking uncomfortable but trying to be civil. We had an awkward conversation, during which David revealed that Sheila had been pressuring him to allow me to remain in Jake's life. He admitted he wasn't comfortable with the idea, but felt guilty about the situation. I could see the conflict in his eyes, the struggle between wanting to be Jake's primary male role model and feeling like he was taking something away from the boy. I assured him that I had no intention of interfering in their family dynamic. I explained my decision to step back, emphasizing that I thought it was best for Jake in the long run. David seemed relieved, and I could see some of the tension leave his shoulders. Jake, oblivious to the tension between adults, asked if we could all go for ice cream together like we used to. The hopefulness in his voice broke my heart. I remembered all the times we had gone to the ice cream parlor down the street from our old apartment, how Jake would always insist on trying a new flavor, but end up getting chocolate chip in the end. I gently explained to him that while I cared about him, I wouldn't be able to spend time with him like before. I told him that he had a new family now, with David, and that it was important for them to build their own traditions and memories. I could see the disappointment in his eyes, and it took everything in me not to change my mind. As we parted ways, David thanked me for being understanding. He promised to do his best to be a good stepfather to Jake. I appreciated his words, but it did little to ease the pain of walking away. I watched as Jake took David's hand, looking back at me over his shoulder as they walked away. It felt like I was losing my family all over again. This encounter has left me emotionally drained. I know I've made the right decision for myself, but seeing Jake has reopened wounds I thought were starting to heal. I'm trying to focus on moving forward with my life, but it's proving to be more challenging than I anticipated. I've started seeing a therapist to help me work through my feelings about the breakup and the situation with Jake. It's helping, but there are still days when the pain feels overwhelming. I'm throwing myself into work and trying to reconnect with old friends, anything to keep my mind off what I've lost. Despite everything, I can't help but wonder if I'm doing the right thing. Am I being selfish by prioritizing my own emotional well-being over Jake's need for stability? Or am I making the best of a bad situation by creating clear boundaries? I don't have the answers, and I'm not sure I ever will. Update 2. It's been 3 months since my last update, and I'm still grappling with the aftermath of my breakup with Sheila. I thought I was making progress and moving on, but recent events have stirred up old feelings and created new complications. Last month, I received an unexpected visit from David. He showed up at my apartment looking distressed, his usually well-groomed appearance disheveled. After some hesitation, he revealed that Sheila had been lying about her pregnancy. She had faked the whole thing in an attempt to manipulate both of us. David discovered the truth when he accompanied Sheila to what was supposed to be her first ultrasound appointment. The doctor found no evidence of pregnancy, and Sheila broke down, admitting to her deception. She had hoped that the fake pregnancy would somehow bring us all closer together and create a happy family situation. I was shocked and angry. Sheila's actions had caused so much unnecessary pain and confusion. The revelation brought back memories of our relationship, making me question every moment we had shared. Had any of it been real? Or had I just been a pawn in her manipulations from the start? David apologized for his part in the situation, admitting that he should have been more skeptical of Sheila's claims, especially given the timing. He looked defeated, the weight of Sheila's lies clearly taking a toll on him. I found myself feeling a strange sense of camaraderie with him, both of us victims of Sheila's deceptions. During our conversation, David also revealed that Sheila had been feeding Jake false information about me. She had told Jake that I didn't want to see him anymore because I didn't love him. This explained why Jake had seemed so hurt during our encounter at the supermarket. The thought of Jake believing I had abandoned him made my heart ache. Hearing this, I felt a surge of anger towards Sheila. Her manipulative behavior had not only affected me, but had also hurt an innocent child. I couldn't stand the thought of Jake believing I had abandoned him. The anger I felt was unlike anything I had experienced before, a mix of rage and profound sadness for the pain Jake must be going through. David asked for my help in explaining the situation to Jake. He felt that Jake deserved to know the truth, and thought hearing it from me might help. I was hesitant, not wanting to get involved again, but I couldn't bear the thought of Jake believing I had stopped caring about him. After much deliberation, I agreed to meet with Jake, with David present. We met at a local park, the same one where I had taught Jake how to ride a bike 2 summers ago. The memory of his triumphant smile when he finally managed to pedal on his own flashed through my mind as we sat down on a bench. I gently explained to Jake that I had never stopped caring about him. I told him that sometimes adults make mistakes and that the situation was complicated, but it wasn't his fault. I tried to choose my words carefully, not wanting to further confuse or upset him. Jake was understandably confused and upset. He asked why his mom would lie, and it broke my heart to see him trying to process such adult problems. I did my best to reassure him without vilifying Sheila, despite my own feelings towards her. It was a delicate balance, trying to be honest with Jake while also protecting him from the full weight of the situation. After our talk, David informed me that he had ended his relationship with Sheila. He was in the process of seeking full custody of Jake, citing Sheila's manipulative behavior and lies as evidence of her unsuitability as a parent. The determination in his eyes made it clear that he was committed to doing what was best for Jake, regardless of his history with Sheila. This whole situation has left me emotionally drained. While I'm glad the truth has come out, I'm struggling with feelings of guilt for not being there for Jake sooner. I'm also grappling with renewed anger towards Sheila for her deception and the pain she's caused everyone involved. I'm not sure what my role should be moving forward. Part of me wants to be there for Jake during this difficult time, but I'm also wary of getting too involved again. The boundaries I had set seem to be blurring, and I'm unsure of how to proceed. I've been having trouble sleeping, my mind constantly replaying the events of the past few months. I find myself wondering what would have happened if I had made different choices. Would things have turned out better if I had stayed involved in Jake's life from the beginning? Or would that have just prolonged the inevitable and caused more pain in the long run? David has been keeping me updated on the custody situation. It's been a messy process, with Sheila fighting tooth and nail to maintain custody of Jake. I've been subpoenaed to testify about my experiences with Sheila and Jake during our relationship. The thought of having to relive everything in court is daunting, but I know it's necessary for Jake's sake. I've also been grappling with my own feelings about potentially becoming more involved in Jake's life again. After spending so much time trying to move on, the idea of stepping back into a parental role is both appealing and terrifying. I worry about the impact it would have on my own healing process, but I also can't shake the feeling of responsibility I have towards Jake. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. I've agreed to occasional supervised visits with Jake, always with David present. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Jake seems to be doing better, though I can tell he's still struggling to understand everything that's happened. As for Sheila, I haven't heard from her directly since the truth about her fake pregnancy came out. Part of me is relieved, but another part feels like there's a lack of closure. I don't know if I'll ever fully understand why she did what she did, or if she truly understands the impact of her actions. I'm left with more questions than answers. How do you balance your own needs with the needs of a child you've come to love but have no legal ties to? Is it possible to maintain healthy boundaries while still being present in Jake's life? And how do you move forward when the past keeps pulling you back? I don't have the answers yet, but I'm trying my best to navigate this complicated situation. For now, all I can do is continue to be honest with Jake, support David in his efforts to provide a stable home, and work on healing myself. It's not an easy path, but I'm hopeful that with time, things will become clearer. Update 3. It's been 6 weeks since my last update, and the situation has taken yet another unexpected turn. I've been trying to maintain a delicate balance between being there for Jake and keeping healthy boundaries, but recent events have made that increasingly challenging. 2 weeks ago, I received a call from Child Protective Services. The woman on the phone identified herself as Melissa Johnson, a social worker assigned to Jake's case. They were investigating Sheila for neglect and wanted to speak with me as a character witness. Apparently, in the wake of her failed relationships with both David and me, Sheila had spiraled into depression and had been neglecting Jake's basic needs. The news hit me like a ton of bricks. Despite everything that had happened, I never imagined Sheila would neglect Jake. He had always been her world. I agreed to speak with the CPS worker, providing them with an honest account of my experiences with Sheila and Jake. It was difficult to revisit those memories, but I knew it was important for Jake's well-being. During my interview with Melissa, I learned more details about the situation. Sheila had been missing work frequently, leaving Jake alone for long periods. The school had reported that Jake often came to class unwashed and without lunch. It was heartbreaking to hear how much things had deteriorated. A few days after my interview with CPS, I got a call from David. His voice was strained as he informed me that Sheila had been deemed temporarily unfit to care for Jake, and he had been granted emergency custody. However, David was struggling to balance his work responsibilities with caring for Jake full-time. His job as a sales representative required frequent travel, which wasn't compatible with being a single parent. In a move that caught me completely off guard, David asked if I would be willing to help care for Jake while he sorted out a more permanent arrangement. He explained that Jake had been asking for me and that having a familiar face around might help him cope with the sudden changes in his life. I was torn. On one hand, I had been trying to distance myself from the situation for my own emotional well-being. The idea of getting involved again scared me. What if I got attached only to have to step away again? On the other hand, I couldn't bear the thought of Jake going through such a difficult time without support. The image of him alone and neglected haunted me. After much internal debate, I agreed to help on a temporary basis. I made it clear to David that this arrangement was not permanent and that we would need to reassess the situation in a few weeks. He seemed relieved and grateful, thanking me profusely. For the past week, I've been spending my afternoons with Jake after he gets out of school. We do homework together, play games, and talk about his day. It's been both heartwarming and heartbreaking to see how much he's missed me and how much he's struggling with the changes in his life. Jake has been asking a lot of questions about his mom and why he can't see her. It's challenging to explain the situation in a way that a 7-year-old can understand without demonizing Sheila. Despite everything, I know it's important for Jake to maintain a positive image of his mother. I find myself choosing my words carefully, trying to be honest without burdening him with adult problems. This situation has stirred up a lot of conflicting emotions for me. I care deeply for Jake and want to ensure he's safe and happy, but I'm also acutely aware that I'm not his parent or legal guardian. I'm worried about the impact this will have on my ability to move on with my own life. Every time I drop Jake off at David's place, I feel a pang of loss, reminiscent of when I first moved out of Sheila's apartment. I've also been grappling with anger towards Sheila. Her actions have caused so much pain and upheaval in Jake's life, and it's difficult not to resent her for it. At the same time, I recognize that she's struggling with her own issues and needs help. It's a complex mix of emotions that I'm still trying to sort through. As it stands, I'm taking things day by day. I'm trying to be there for Jake, while also maintaining some semblance of boundaries. It's a delicate balance, and I'm not sure how long I can maintain it. I'm also aware that at some point, I'll need to step back and let Jake's legal guardians take over fully. The thought of having to say goodbye to Jake again is painful, but I know it might be necessary. This whole experience has made me question a lot about relationships, responsibility, and the unexpected ways our lives can intertwine with others. I'm doing my best to navigate this complicated situation, but I'm still unsure if I'm making the right choices. For now, I'm focused on providing Jake with the stability and support he needs, while also trying to take care of my own emotional well-being. It's not an easy path, but I'm hopeful that with time, things will become clearer.